Drive, brought to you by Golf Pride.
Welcome into this Sunday edition of Morning Drive. Under normal circumstances, we would be talking about and getting you ready for the final round of the Masters tournament. But these are extraordinary times. That's not the case. It doesn't mean we can't be fortified thinking back on all the things that make the Masters special, starting with last year. So at 11:30 today here on Golf Channel, you will get live from the Masters. This was early on Sunday morning, leading in to that final round. And then at 6 o'clock tonight, the full recap on Live from the Masters from 2019, the visceral reaction of the men who watched history being made at Augusta National last year. Speaking of history, joining me now on what is a special day. It was a special day for him on more than the two occasions in which he won, the 1984 and 1995 Masters Champion Ben Crenshaw. Very pleased to have him with us, and always a pleasure to chat with you, Ben. I mentioned these are extraordinary times. Most importantly, I hope you, Julian, the girls, your whole family, hope everybody's well.
Thank you, Gary. It's our pleasure to be on. You know, you're so right. This week, it's kind of melancholy because, you know, for the 48th time, I would have been packing up to go to the Masters. I'm so relieved. I know that golfers everywhere are relieved that it's going to be played this fall, but it's tough to take, you know, and it's for all athletics for that particular reason. I can't imagine not only golfers, but all athletes have just been put on hold. They wanted to display their best athletic performances. Right now, I just can't imagine what coaches and administrators are thinking about, but it's going to be a renewal. It's around the corner. We just have to somehow stay a little more patient.
Now, I think patience is maybe the most important thing that we can all try to exercise right now. You mentioned thinking about it. I want you, because you're such an astute observer of the game, not to mention its history. What happened last year on that Sunday? What do you remember most about what transpired and ultimately what happened with Tiger winning that fifth green jacket?
I think that it was a remarkable restraint. He played with such restraint, and execution. Tiger is some kind of surveyor. He knows what's going on all over and all of the time, and he was so patient. But his swing to me is remarkably balanced now, but apart from the act of hitting the golf ball, his mental acuity really showed, because I think that he conjured up things that he had learned from the golf course in the past. He knows how to play that golf course. He knew when to attack and when to play with more restraint. And it just so happened that that his pursuers made the tiniest mistakes. And, you know, Tiger patiently waited them out. His execution was flawless. Every shot that he played was, I'm not saying safe, but in the correct position, so that he can enable himself to pull even with them and then finally victory. But, you know, it's once again, Gary, the tiniest hole over there made the number 12. If you think about the things that have happened in that particular 160 yards over the past is remarkable. It receives the accolades that it should always get. I mean, yes, we're in a power era, and the rest of the golf course is, but now you've got a hole that's a mean little 155-yard hole that, you know, you can't imagine these two guys hitting the ball in the water. And then Tiger took the fat side of the green. He knew how to patiently wait them out. So it was some kind of victory.
You know, Ben, you mentioned it's around the corner. Autumn. at Augusta National. Give people a sense of what that golf course is like. I'm certain you've played it in all the times of the year when the club is open. They have certain advantage and they have capabilities that very few facilities have. Mid-November at Augusta National, what do you think we can expect?
Well, cooler temperatures, no question. But the thing that I really hope for is dry weather. Augusta National always plays its most elusive when it's dry and fast, and it opens up the possibilities of the mental game really coming into the picture, because the greens could be really glassy. I think that's a nice word to me. If you get cooler temperatures and if you get breeze, and then it makes the greens very fast. That's what you want. I always remember my dear old friend Herbert Warren Wynn, one of the greatest writers America's ever produced. He would always arrive at the tournament and he would ask at the front office, "Is it firm? Is it dry?" That was his first question always. So the players, will have to adapt. It would play longer, I'm certain, but it depends on the two things: breeze and temperature, and hopefully it's dry.
Ben, the golf course itself for you, when you went there for the first time in 1972, you were the low amateur that year, you were the following year, and your record subsequently was extraordinary. You ran second a couple times before you won in '84. What was the most illuminating thing early on in playing the golf course that you felt would serve you well to ultimately win the golf tournament?
When you first arrive at Augusta, I'm just like everybody else, Gary. And when you see it on television, having not been there, and when you get on the grounds, you just can't believe how big everything is. The proportions and the scale and the undulations and the hills and the trees are tall. And it's the most inviting golf course in the world. But that could lull you into all sorts of it's so big your mind is so open when you play it, and you start learning it, and it takes a lifetime of learning. There's no question about that. And in that regard, it is a little like St. Andrews, because Bobby Jones and Dr. McKenzie wanted an inland rolling golf course. Well, it is that, but the intricacies of the greens and playing to one side or another. And I must admit, Gary, when I played my first 25 years, that golf course, there was not one speck of second cut or rough, let's say. And it really it fooled you, because if the course was running, an errant ball off the tee many, many times ran into trouble. And a lot of times you're trying to play one side of the fairway or another to get a better attack to the green. But the ball just seemingly found the trouble so many times. And that just, it made you really scratch your head, because having all that room to play, and you say, well, how could the ball end up over there or something? But that was its nature. But Augusta National has done the very finest job of trying to prepare a test for modern play. And, in my era, we never did conceive of people hitting the ball this far. But it's the right amount of shot-making sequences, and it's agronomically, there's no other course like it in the world. I'm hoping that there's a dearth of ryegrass in the fall. I know they'll try to push it and have it come on, but the more ryegrass you've got, the stickier it could play. So maybe the Bermuda will hold in there, but I just want it dry and quick. That's what I'd like to see.
You know, Ben, we're going to celebrate your 25th anniversary of the 95 win a little bit later in the year. But if I said to you, and I know that there were a lot of weighty moments in 84 and 95, but if I asked you to confine your thought to what was the most critical moment in 1984 and then again in 1995, could you pick one?
You won my second putt on the 14th green in 1984. I had played a really slack second shot, and I was about 65 feet above the cup, and I putted it down to about 14 feet. And I made that second putt, and that just gave me so much peace. I could have slipped another shot. I didn't need to at that time. I had the lead, and then it, enabled me to play on in, but it was a desperate putt. I mean, I could have it could have really broken my concentration quite a bit. Yeah, I did make that long putt at number 10, which was just bizarre. I mean, I would have killed for a 2-putt at that juncture. And then I had to calm down for 2 holes after making that one. So it was a roller coaster. But somehow that second putt on 14 really calmed me in order to play the last few. So in 84, and then 95 was it was amazing. I had never played a tournament just with 5 bogeys in a week, and that's very unlike me. I'm kind of temperamental at times. My temper gets the best of me, but I had a calm and a peace that week that if I made a mistake, I got it back quickly. So it kind of kept me a little more on even keel. A lot of moments there during that last round. I made a nice putt at 13 to keep pace with everyone, about a 20-footer. And then played through, and I remember teeing off at 16. I had seen that Davis Love had finished with a closing great round. And I was even with him, and I needed a birdie quickly, and I got it at 16, and then I made an insurance one at 17. But things happened, beautifully for me. But I've told many people, Gary, I had a lot of help from a lot of different places that week. Somehow I was allowed to play some of my best golf in that situation after losing my old teacher, my friend, and I got through it somehow.
You know, Ben, it's interesting. You mentioned that par putt on 14 and 84. Brandel Chambly last week went back and watched that network broadcast on CBS, and he thought that particular stroke, that putt, was the essence of the blending of art and science. By the way, Nick Faldo putted before you on a similar line and left it a little low and to the left, and yours dripped right over the edge. And I will say this about 95. You mentioned the absence of bogeys. The lone bogey you made on the second nine the whole week was on the closing hole, and I thought you drove it with that tight kind of bullet draw on the inward nine. That ball was bounding down fairways. That was about as good a display of driving under circumstances that I'd seen from you in a long, long time. Would you agree with that?
I did. I drove it really well. It's funny. I pulled 2 balls, Gary, that last day with my T-ball. And the T-ball on number 2, I got over it and hooked it a little bit, and it did catch a limb and came out. That was a great break early in the round. So that was that was a big help. And then I pulled it on number 14. Pulled it and I got a little bit of a bounce to the right, and then I played a beautiful second shot there, but it could have ended up in a worse spot. But I drove it well most of the day. Other than those 2, it was pretty good. I actually the 13th hole, I drove it around the corner. I had never been there ever. I hit a 5-iron to the green. That's pretty good for me. But and I just I pulled my 5-iron, and that was not a good shot. But I got it up and down. But no, it was warm that day. The ball was going pretty well, traveling well. And in saying that, cooler temperatures, you just can't hit the ball as far. So I'm hoping for good weather this fall, but you know what? It's going to be what it is, and people will have to adjust. But the greatest thing is it's going to be played, and I can't wait to get there. I've only played a couple of times there in the fall, but it's the same great test every time.
Ben, speaking of getting there and the Champions Dinner, have you spent a moment, because you become kind of the touchstone of that dinner, knowing what we might be on, not necessarily the end of it, but the back end of something that's going to establish a new normal in our society and really around the world, what that evening is going to mean to all of you to be able to congregate together as you do annually. It's already one of the special nights of the year. Have you thought for a moment about what that night is going to be like in November?
Now, I have done some thinking about it, and like I say, we're going to be relieved, but it's going to be a resurgence in a lot of things have to do with hope and inspiration. If you go through trying times like this in our nation, that you have to look forward to things. And this is obviously from the Masters Champions minds. It's a feeling of thankfulness that we can get into a single room and enjoy each other, relive our recollections of what happened to each player. I've always found it fascinating that the talk and the hearsay always is, you'd always turn to your other champions and tell me what clubs were you hitting into certain greens? Who were you chasing? Who was doing what? How did you feel? What adjustments did you make? How was your practice like? What adjustments did you make? Everybody has their own story, and the eras come together, and it's remarkable because golf and technology have been tumultuous, and the balls and equipment that we play means so much to our game, enables you to do things, but it's a big part of the game, and it's sort of timeless when you really think about it. You look at the champions' faces and you know what they've been through, and the one common thread, Gary, is that it is mentally excruciating to know that you have to take a chance somewhere to get ahead. You can't play safe all the time. You can't do that. Your heart's in your throat a lot of times when you play. I'll tell you what, there is nothing to me that in my golfing lifetime, there's nothing like being in contention at Augusta. There's something about that place that turns you on so much, and it's why you play. But being in contention there's nothing like it.
Well, Ben, let me end with this, because anybody who knows you knows that everything's personal to you, your relationships with other people, with your family, with the game of golf, with nature. And that 350 some odd acres in Augusta, Georgia is really, really valuable green space. But even smaller parcels of land, more modest parcels of land are personal to all of us. So Winter Park 9, where I live, a couple guys who are close to you, Riley Johnson, Keith Rebb, did a brilliant job a couple years ago restoring something over 100 years old. You're in the midst of being a part of something that is very personal to you in your hometown, Lyons Muni. Space has always been valuable to us. It may be more valuable than it's ever been whenever we get back to whatever normal is going to be. I want you to talk about that project and how important it is to you, and in turn, how important you think it is to the community you live in.
It is vital. To me, it's mental health and mental exercise to get outdoors and play a game that's been around for 500 years. There's a commonality in all golfers. And you know what it is? It's hope. It's hope. To see the ball fly through the air, and when you bring off a shot that sometimes you scratch your head, how did that ball get there? And or a sinking of a putt, or it's an acknowledgement from your playing partner, or something like that. It's the social part of the game that means so much to us, to all golfers, and to enjoy a game that's been around so long. I think it's good for the health of people and health of communities. I think Donald Ross said it a long time ago. I'm trying to paraphrase what he said. He said, if a country gets golf-minded, you needn't not worry about its citizens. I'm paraphrasing, but it was a nice capsulization of what he thought golf meant to people. But if we can keep places like that, especially for the public, anyone can play. You can play your whole life in golf and learn every day about something. I think it's a pretty good exercise.
Well, that's a great way to end it, and we are hopeful that we'll be able to see you before Thanksgiving, and we will celebrate that 25th anniversary of the 95 Masters win, your second green jacket. That is Ben Crenshaw, kind enough to join us. A reminder again that we will have live from the Masters, 11:30 a.m. Eastern, leading into what was that final round in 2019, and then again at 6 p.m., the reaction to all the men who were part of that great team, to Tiger Woods making history last year.